Garden Express are Australia's leading mail ordering service, offering a wide range of quality gardening products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show, you jump online and visit their website.
Well, g'day, hello, welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. I'm Trevor Cochrane. It's nice to be back. We've been obviously in recess as the Garden Gurus TV series has been having a rest, and we didn't really stop, to be quite honest. We've been very, very busy working on lots of different projects, as well as our spring series, which launches this week, actually, on Channel 9 this weekend. You'll find it at 4:30 on Saturday, right across Channel 9, and if you're in Sydney and Brisbane, 9 Live. So it's really lovely to be back. We also have taken on a few degrees of difficulty with this particular session, and obviously you'll know we're actually in the afternoon in Australia at the moment. So that's actually, see the gardener here in behind me just doing a little bit of watering. There's a reason why we started late, and that's because I'm here in Porto in Portugal on assignment for the Explore TV series, which we're about to start filming over the next few days. In fact, we start tomorrow and we run for a good couple of weeks. And it's going to be a bit of a challenge because there's a lot to do, and of course the weather is actually pretty warm here in Europe. If you've been watching the news, you'll see Greece has had those terrible fires, and of course Portugal isn't that far away. But I thought we'd have a quick run through, because this is very important this time of the year, just on the weather, because Porto, where I am in Portugal, low of 15. It's a little cool. It's only 8:04 a.m. here too, just so you know. So we're starting early here, but of course it's afternoon there. Low of 15, high of 27 here in Porto. Perth is a low of 6 with a high of 16 today. Melbourne, low of 8. And speaking of Melbourne, we'll be chatting with my very, very good mate, Rowan, in about 5 seconds, I think. Pretty soon, he's coming online. But high of 17, so Melbourne's actually warmer than Perth. Brisbane, low of 11, high of 22. Sydney, low of 11, high of 20. Continuing that warm trend through the winter. Now, this is a really interesting thing, because, of course, it's going to trigger growth. So I'm sure a lot of the questions that you're going to send us very soon will relate to actually how your garden's performing in that situation. Where else are we? So Sydney, high of 20. Adelaide, low of 7, high of 14. It's a bit chilly in Adelaide. And Hobart, low of 8 and high of 16, warmer than Adelaide. So there you go. We've got lots and lots of questions coming through. But before we get into answering your gardening questions, we do have we've got a great guest who comes from a family business that supports everything that we do here at Gurus, and we're very grateful for their support. They're continuing to do that as we go through this series. Rowan, have we got Rowan online? There he is. G'day, mate.
Hey, everyone. How are you going?
Very good. I can see, obviously, it's still a bit on the cool side there in Melbourne at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And it's obviously being, 5 o'clock. It's starting to get dark here, but it's a little bit of rain. It's been a beautiful day, though. Really nice, sunny, crisp but sunny day here in Melbourne. So it's been nice.
Well, we're heading into obviously longer days, and as the days get longer and we get more sunlight, plants start growing. Certainly, everybody's giving us a bit of a rundown on how their weather's looking just at the moment, and the general consensus is it's pretty cool out there still. But this is the perfect time to get out and get into the garden and start planting things, knowing that it's going to, I suppose, eventuate in all its glory come springtime, or alternatively, in the early summer.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And I'm super excited to talk about what we've got on offer this week, which is Kangaroo Paw, one of my absolute favourites. As you know, Trevor, when Chloe and I were over in Perth a little bit earlier in the year, we got to catch up with Digby and Sue from Kings Park and have a look at their breeding program. which was absolutely amazing. It's really nice to go behind the scenes and see, some of the amazing work they're doing with the breeding of kangaroo paw and grevilleas, which we can talk about a bit later on in the season. So we put together this amazing collection of starter plants, so kangaroo paws, King's Park varieties. In a 50ml pot, you're going to get 5 of those.
Fantastic! They're the perfect starter plant.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've put together an amazing collection of King's Park varieties. There's 5, like I said, in the collection. You're going to get Bush Gem Pearl, which is a beautiful pink, vibrant pink kangaroo paw. You're going to get Bonanza, which is a yellow, beautiful, vibrant yellow. You're going to get Elegance, which is a red kangaroo paw, almost burgundy.
It's actually it's probably the most tried and proven kangaroo variety in Australia as far as kangaroo paws go. It is one you will see just about everywhere because it performs so well.
So well, yeah, exactly right. And then Bush Diamond, which is as the name suggests, a beautiful white one with hints of pink in it, which is beautiful, and rounded off with a fantastic orange one, Bush Blitz. So you're going to get all 5 of those for just $33, which is amazing value.
That's a great deal. By the way, a lot of people think when they're getting kangaroo paws that they need to get the larger pots, but in actual fact, kangaroo paws are best grown from tubes. So if you can get them in a decent grow tube, and you can see there's a few different types. That was the black actually, which is a different sort of form. But you can see that's the traditional West Australian floral emblem, that particular one there. And these are some of the varieties that have been bred by King's Park that are just outstanding. You can see the work that Digby has done. He's just a crazy, remarkable man, isn't he? He's a really humble, but just an incredibly talented breeder.
Amazing, and if Digby doesn't know, it's not worth knowing. When it comes to kangaroo paw, the guy's amazing. Absolutely.
Well, I think obviously I think last year we featured obviously the blue, and I think when that came, even Digby was surprised. But there's a thing that I think to probably to keep in mind, and that is, and it's something I was talking to him about. So in the first episode of this series of the Garden Gurus, I do a story with him as well. So you are not going to have any stock left by the time this goes to air, because when you realise what he does to make these things grow, it's just incredible. And it was this revelation, I suppose, when we're talking about the blue. He said, Trevor, I had no idea that the blue gene existed.
Yeah.
So it's been sitting there in the plants, dormant basically, and through his natural breeding program, it's not like he's doing something here with genetic manipulation of any sort. It's just natural breeding. He's just fast-tracked the process.
Yeah.
Blue suddenly emerged, and that's what's exciting about where he's going. And when you see some of these new varieties that are going to come down the line next year or the year after, they're just this collection of plants is going to drive the world crazy, because everybody's going to want to have them in their garden.
There's some exciting stuff coming through. We actually had the celebration series a little bit earlier in the year. Obviously included some of the blue. We couldn't get our hands on it for this one, but these are all Bush Gem King's Park varieties, so King's Park bred varieties.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll have those blue ones a little bit later on in the year again. So
as they come through, and there's probably another thing here, Rowan, which most of our viewers won't be aware, but there is a big shortage at the moment of quality kangaroo paws in Australia. So, and I'm not really sure why it is. I think it's actually just demand. I think they're just such a great flowering plant. They've been selling a lot faster.
Yeah, I think the resurgence of natives, and obviously kangaroo pearl being, a lot of people's favourite native, and the amount and the array of colours that you can get down just makes them in high demand, as you say.
Well, they're such a rewarding plant. They do grow really well. There's some great growing tips from Digby in this week's episode for some people. Some people have got very heavy soils, or they're in a lot cooler, wetter conditions, and they're not necessarily the most ideal for kangaroo paws. But Digby just cuts through and gives some fantastic advice on how to actually obviously get the very best out of your kangaroo paws, and proves that you can grow them pretty much anywhere in Australia. So
anyway, yep.
All the more reason why people, if they want to take advantage, what a great starting deal, mate. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the great thing about Garden Express is it's not like they have to drive out to pick them up from you.
No,
You're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and people can shop from the comfort of their armchair. And, of course, you deliver direct to their door.
We sure do. Just jump on the website. There'll be a big banner there waiting for you. Take you straight to the kangaroo paw offer. Like Trev mentioned, it will not last long. I'm not too sure exactly the quantity we've got, but there's never enough.
Just shows that tube again too.
Yeah, so this is what you're going to get. You're going to get 5 plants of that. This one's actually got a flower coming out. I don't know if you guys can see it there, but it's almost it's going to burst soon. And this one is Kings Park Royal, which is one of my favourites. It's a beautiful pink to lilac. It's got an orange stem. It's an amazing one. So $8.90 for individuals. But if you grab that 5-pack we mentioned earlier, you're going to get a bit over 25% saving, $33 for 5 plants.
That's a great deal, mate. Well, look, thanks very much. Thanks for your continued support, Rowan. I know we've got some really cool deals coming up for everybody over the next 16 weeks as we run through the Garden Guru series as well. So,
absolutely.
Thanks.
We're so happy to be involved once again.
Good stuff. Well, give my best to Chloe and David. You guys you do a great job. Keep it up, and we'll speak to you again real soon.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Always a pleasure.
Cheers. How clever is that? You think about technology. I'm sitting here. It's the morning is just starting to happen. It's now 8:14 here in Porto, in Spain, in Portugal, and here we are, 5 p.m. in Melbourne, and everything's going on now. There are some really cool points coming through here. Everybody's sharing some bits and pieces. There was a really good point somebody raised just before with regards to weather. And did mention that it's been very dry in Brisbane and Sydney, and certainly warmer in Melbourne at the moment than normal winters would be. And that is without doubt because we are seeing a change in the weather pattern. So we've had La Nina for the last 3 years, and La Nina brings on, as we well know, a lot of rain. And so we've dealt with very wet springs and summers. And that has very different challenges to what we're about to go through. And that is that we're going to go through possibly an El Nino, which is the opposite extreme. So that'll mean that on the east coast of Australia, it's certainly a lot drier and possibly a lot warmer. So, these are going to be different challenges, and we're going to see plants that are suddenly going to re-emerge and start growing really well. We'll see trees that have been struggling with sodden roots for the last few years suddenly start to make a recovery, and they're going to need a bit of help. So we'll share some tips and ideas as to how to do that. It's so lovely to get all of your comments coming through. I'm so appreciative of the kind words that you're sharing about us being back. It's fantastic to be back, and it really does. It warms my heart when I get those sorts of comments. So thank you to everybody. I think the last one on my list at the moment is Terry. So these are all fantastic. Now, look, we've got lots of questions coming through, and I should mention that back in Perth, producing this at the moment is Shaylee, and Shaylee, as you well knew, produced last series and did an amazing job. But talk about a good job. She's got information flying right across the globe to me, so I can be answering your questions live, and we can be chatting live, which is even crazier. So thanks, Shaylee. Now, let me fly at some of these questions. Let's go to Toowoomba. Hello, Catherine Barker. You have put some pictures in. Oh, here we go. My hydrangea bushes are coming through like this. Could you please tell me what the problem is and how I can fix it? I have some really good news for you. That is completely natural. Don't worry about it because your hydrangeas are having a rest. They are a deciduous shrub. And when they go deciduous, they start to take the goodness back into the stems of the plant. And as you see that goodness going back in, you'll see colour transformation on the foliage. And that's what we would call autumn foliage. That's what's going on. So it's just at the moment storing the sugars back inside the stems for that dormant period. And it's just the plant having a bit of a rest, because we're only about 2 or 3 weeks away from them bursting new growth, and you'll see a total recovery. I can see, just on that photo, I can see, the new buds starting to swell. And that is when it's a good idea to actually give them a feed. And something like Troforte is always a good, a controlled release is always a good thing. So it's very interesting. We've got some interesting questions coming through too. So Catherine, don't worry. They should all be looking like that at the moment, and there's no bugs or disease that you've got to worry about. Okay, let's go. Kate and Lynn, hello. Unknown, we're not sure where you are. I should mention, tell me where you are, because it does help me an enormous amount when I'm trying to identify what's going on. How do I repair a wet lawn fast? Now, I would imagine what you've got is a lawn that has undergone some kind of stress. And usually that's compaction and soddenness of heavy rainfall. Now, to be quite honest, I'm experiencing this at home, because back in Perth, we're getting above average rainfall, certainly for the last 2 months anyway. And we look like we're on track. What we're probably looking to do in this sort of situation, what I've just recently done is I've done a bit of a lawn renovation. So I actually got what we call a vertimower, and we went through and mowed it. And I filmed this, so you'll get to see what we did, and you'll get to see the results in a very short period of time. I actually did half my lawn and left the other half. So let's have a look and see what happens there. But I'm probably going to suggest to you that you don't really need to worry about that just at the moment. What I'm going to suggest you do is look at forking some holes into your lawn. So it doesn't have to be, a coring machine. If you can get a fork in, and then get yourself some gypsum. Now, gypsum's a really interesting thing. It's an important thing because gypsum is a form of calcium. Calcium's really good at doing a couple of things. One is it does strengthen a plant's immune system. It builds up the strength, the cellular strength in the plant, and improves its functionality. So the movement of moisture through the system, from the roots to the foliage, increases. Now, this metabolizing of the plant is a good thing. But the other thing that gypsum does is it opens the soil up. It's often used in heavy clays to really get some air into the soil. And this is really important because plants' roots actually need that. So it's a really important thing to do. And it doesn't matter if your lawn's actually looking really good at the moment. A bit of gypsum over your lawn just at the moment will do it the world of good as we move into the springtime. We massively underestimate the value of I suppose, putting calcium into the soil. And in garden beds, as long as you're not in a very alkaline soil, adding something like garden lime or dolomite or gypsum if you are in a coastal situation. I should say gypsum, the great thing about gypsum is it's pH neutral. So if you apply it, you're putting calcium into the soil, but you're not going to make your soil more alkaline. Whereas with garden lime and dolomite, you will a little bit. So hopefully that very convoluted long answer explains things. Kate and Lynn, thank you very much. Let's keep going. Nick Pavlitis, hello from Melbourne. How are you going, mate? Quite a few comments coming through from you, which is great. How can people hand their election garden tools in a... Oh, I get what you're going. Hang your electric garden tools in a small shed. I've got it now. I've got some things like electric blower and trimmer. Actually, look, it's a really good question. I've actually, for many years I had the same sort of thing. In my shed, I have racking. I've got to put some racking around the outside, and it's that Dexian racking. So the uprights have holes in there, and I literally have wire hooks that I've made, and I'm hanging my various tools down off those wire hooks, and that really is a good way to go. So won't hurt at all. If you can do that, I would certainly think about that for sure. Charlie's having a bit of a laugh because I did manage to actually interpret that. I'm going to share with you in a couple of minutes my plant of the week, and it's because I'm here in Portugal. It's obviously the tail end of summer at the moment, and the plant that I'm going to show you is one that is going to be in a completely opposite season, but it'll help you a fair bit when I talk to you about it. I'll just answer a couple more questions. We've got a great one here. Kerry McClure, Rolly Stone, that's in Western Australia. Am I too late to prune my mango tree? Definitely don't do that now, Kerry. Okay, so you really now want to let your mango tree recover from the winter. It'll be probably producing buds and starting to head towards flowering, and you don't want to be cutting it back then either. You want it to fruit, and as soon as it's finished fruiting, there's a very important two-stage action you need to take. One is you need to feed the soil dramatically, and that's a really important thing. So that's where that high K fertilizer, the controlled release from Trevor is really good. The second thing you need to do is at that point you can give it a trim. And you can either prune it to shape, or you can take certain branches out. There's all sorts of things that you can do. So definitely do not prune now though, because one of the problems with tropical plants is that they do get diseases during cold conditions, particularly when they're not climatically adjusted. And Rolly Stone is a cooler climate certainly than even the Perth sand plains. So hopefully that helps you. Don't forget. Tell us where you're from. Really important. State and ideally town if you're not in one of the major capital cities. I did see a comment. Just can you add gypsum? This is Gabby. Thanks for joining us, Gabby. Can you add gypsum on sandy soils for grass in Melbourne? And actually, you can definitely use it in sandy soils in Melbourne. Sometimes, every once in a while, it's worthwhile taking a bit of a pH test as well. And you can do that more often than not by actually just taking a sample down to your local garden centre and asking them if they can pH test it for you. A lot of garden centres offer that service. As long as your soil is kind of, I don't know, pH neutral, ideally sort of somewhere between 6 and 7, ideally 6.5, you'll be in a situation where you will probably not have to worry about whether it's garden lime or whether it's gypsum. Gypsum is certainly very good for improving soil structure. If you've got a sandy soil, though, you're not worried so much about soil structure because you're probably more worried about getting organics into it, improving the carbon content. So good question, Gabby. Thank you for asking that. Should mention that question of the day, we'll be getting a $50 Garden Express gift voucher, a chance to go shopping, maybe pick up a few of those kangaroo paws along the way as well. So, yes, that's that question answered. Let's keep moving along. Carolyn PT, Great Ocean Road in Victoria. You've sent us some photographs. Now, this one was a bit of a mystery because when I first saw the photos of just the bud, I thought it looked like a close-up shot of a freesia because of the way that the bud was structured. And Carolyn, you didn't at the time know, and I didn't realise how big it was, but you've been keeping us date, and now I know exactly what it is, so it's all good. What I can probably sort of tell you is that's crocosoma. It's a South African bulb, and it's not common to see that particular orange. It's quite a lovely orange, and it's you sort of said I'd taken a bit of a guess. It looks like Watsonia. It does look a bit like Watsonia, but I'm pretty sure this one's crocosoma only because of the way that the flower structure is. If you take a look, it does look a little bit different. Wonderful plant. It will flower basically as we move through, sort of into the sort of early summer basically, and then it'll kind of go dormant through then and probably burn off a little bit. So you can cut this back as well. So yeah, that's lovely. Thanks. I'm glad we got to solve that one, Carolyn. This is what staying in touch really does. Now, Shaylee has told me, Trevor, you've got to do your plant of the week. And I told you, you know what this is. You know what they are. There's something that nobody in Australia will probably have growing at home at the moment, but they're grapes. And the reason why I thought I would make that my plant of the week is because at the moment, pretty much wherever you are in Australia, there's something you need to do. And it's a 2-part treatment. Yes, Gabby, good one. Yep, good guess. The 2-part treatment is a spray. Now, the reason why I'm suggesting this, and you'll probably be thinking, they don't have any foliage on them. Why would I spray now? Well, now is the time to be spraying, because if you spray the trunks, the stems of the vine, what you're going to do is you're going to kill off the majority of the fungal spores of 2 or 3 different funguses that tend to ruin your crops. And so now is the time to be spraying. I know it sounds weird, but liquid copper from Yates, I literally last weekend before I jumped on the plane, sprayed mine at home with that, and I need to do it again before they actually burst. And the second thing, and it's really your call which way you go, but you can either do mancozeb, which is very effective, and spray again, soaking the stem. And it's a really weird thing, but you actually want the bark of the plant to be completely drenched. That's the important thing. And yes, or the alternative, and I should have mentioned that, was lime sulfur, which is another traditional spray. But lime sulfur and copper, typically those two are really important. And something like mancozeb can be sprayed when the plant starts to burst into foliage. But at that point, you can't spray lime sulfur or the copper sprays. Otherwise, you'll tend to find those new shoots will burn, and that causes other problems. Gabby's asked a question: will a grapevine cutting take now? As a friend of mine has some Shiraz grapes. Oh, Gabby, I think we're coming to your place to make some wine. Actually, now is the time to be growing your grapes from cutting. Most grape varieties are actually grown from cutting, so it's not hard to do. You sort of take a stem cutting about as thick as my finger, but you probably want them about that long, which is a bit more, maybe 10, 15 centimetres in length. And just into a free draining cutting mixture. The guys from Evergreen with Osmocote, they actually have a really good propagation mixture that you can get your hands on for seedlings or for cuttings, and it's fantastic. What I would do is I'd get about 10 of those shoots. You'll be guaranteed that at least 3 or 4 of them will take. You'll end up with 3 or 4 grapevines. It's that easy. Once they've dropped roots in probably November, you ease them all out of the pot, maybe put them into their own dedicated pot, let them settle in, and then probably by about sort of January, you're ready to plant. Hopefully that helps. There you go. And Gabby's excited about getting those grape cuttings going, which is fantastic. Let's keep rolling along because Shaylee has lots and lots of questions for me. Nikki Roberts is in Perth. I've got a lovely vintage red eucalyptus, which I was told can be kept to 2 to 3 metres in height. Any advice on how and when to prune? Tree planted a year or so ago, already it's about 2 metres tall. So interestingly enough, there are a whole range of beautiful grafted eucalyptus that are the members generally of the red flowering eucalyptus form Physofolia. And the interesting thing about them is the dwarfs. They're meant to be dwarf. They're meant to be compact, so they shouldn't be getting to 2 metres very quickly. And sometimes things are not labelled the right way. So I'm kind of wondering whether there's a bit of a problem there. But look, the truth of the matter is that with all native plants, you can prune them, and you should prune them, and there's not a particular time of the year. You can prune them pretty much all year round, knowing that they're coming into summertime, which is when they'll come into flower. So, if you cut them back too hard, you might affect the flower display. But other than that, prune like crazy. It does native plants the world of good in an intensive gardening environment, which is what we all have at home. So we are the ultimate farmers because we have to work that soil. We have to keep those plants healthy because we don't have a lot of room, and we tend to grow more intensely than they would do naturally. So hopefully that explains my logic. This is the only opportunity I think you really get to get inside my head and hear me ramble, but hopefully explain in a little more depth than the time that I have available with television. So it's really good to be able to sort of explain this, and I hope it's of value to you. That's the important thing, because sometimes this will explain the reason behind something that we recommend or suggest, and then you suddenly get a good grip on exactly what it is I'm trying to tell you. Okay, let's keep going. Lynn Winstanley, it's great to have you back with us, Lynn. Lynn's in Claremont, which is a beautiful western suburb in Perth. It's absolutely gorgeous. My Moreas in my north-facing garden have yellowing leaves. And yes, I am assuming it's a lack of iron. What would you recommend to rectify this problem? Okay, now here's the funny thing about pH. We've been talking about it today. Interestingly enough, if your soil becomes too alkaline, so too high in the pH scale, certain greening elements, certainly greening minerals, including iron and magnesium, become they basically get locked up in the soil. They're not available to the plant. They're there, so you can put more and more on. You can actually have a toxicity of iron sitting in that soil, and yet the plant can't take it up, and it's because the pH is out of whack. And I would put money on it, Lynn, that it's more likely that you've got a problem with your pH than anything. So the simple thing to do to try and buffer, if you like, the pH, which brings it back down to more of a level, is to simply add mulch. And ideally, if you can, pine needle mulch is acidic, so that's really going to act quite quickly on changing the soil pH. But just general mulch will buffer that pH in the surface area of the soil, and that's where the majority of the feeder roots are. So maybe not apply too much more iron if you're already aware of iron. Maybe just think about the pH first. If you think your pH is okay, definitely do a test. If you think it's okay, then applying iron, applying magnesium sulfate, which is Epsom salts, mixed into a watering can and watered over the foliage. Great way to get a very instant effect. It's absorbed through the leaves, and you will see if it's just a dull light green, not sort of dark green veins, that's more often than not the classic sign of magnesium. That will be absorbed through the foliage very quickly, and those leaves will turn a dark green colour pretty quickly. So hopefully, Lynn, my first question answered for you this season. Hopefully that helps you an awful lot. Let's keep going. We're going to Melbourne. What conditions in Melbourne do kangaroo paws grow? Do they need full sun? They do prefer full sun, but they don't absolutely need it. And what I mean by that is that a lot of kangaroo paws, there's 14 naturally occurring species of kangaroo paws in the world, and they all occur in the southwest corner of Australia, in Western Australia, pretty much the majority all in this area. And the thing that's really interesting is the majority of the soils they grow in, not all, but the majority of soils they grow in generally are fairly free draining. And that's where the trick comes into what was suggested. Have a think about this, was that if you do have heavy soils, if you are in a situation where you have shade that's quite heavy at certain times of the year because of the way the sun moves, grow them in a pot. It's the classic way to make sure that the soil is free draining, and at the same time that you're in a situation where if you need to move it into a sunnier spot, you can do it. Also, when it's in flower, you can bring it in closer. When you want, you can have it right next to your entertaining area or wherever it is that you spend time, front door, whatever it is. Anyway, that should help. I hope that's a bit of assistance, Jody. Thank you so much. Now, Nick Pavlidis has come up with a pretty interesting one. Now, I know you're in Melbourne, mate. Have you ever built any Lego plants? I haven't, Nick. What a great idea. Maybe we should have a Lego plant off and get our guys, Lego Man and the team from Lego Masters in to assist us with that. That'd be quite interesting. I'm going to keep moving along, Nick, but thanks for that. Let's go to Kerry Colmer. She's in New South Wales and the Central Coast. What is the best indoor plant for a bedroom that does not get much light? Okay, so typically, here's the funny thing. So if you've got plants that have got variegation or they've got dark leaves, not good in dark positions as a general comment. Plants that have very big broad leaves tend to be quite good in dark spots. So things like Monstera, no problems at all. Even the fiddle leaf fig will do pretty well in dark conditions as long as it's come from a shade house environment. Probably the one that's indestructible, the one you can't kill, is the ZZ plant. And that is Zamioculus is a really, really tough plant. It's so hardy. In fact, you can treat them really, really mean, not water them for weeks at times, and they'll still survive and look good, not go backwards. So there's 3 options for you. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Precious Priscilla, hello. My chilies are going ripe before they mature. I get tiny red chilies instead of long ones. Well, that could be a combination of two things. Precious, that could be a situation where it's very cold and they're not able to fully develop, so the plant's not growing strongly. Chilies are really a summer crop. Most places they'll actually grow, several years in a pot and not have a problem. But what you will find is during the winter, the fruit is smaller, and that's the giveaway there. So if it could also just be that it's a variety that is actually smaller. So don't go getting too concerned. Find a nice warm spot for the next 2 months, and then after that, get it into full sun, give it lots and lots of warm conditions, and you should end up with big long chilies, I would think. It shouldn't be too hard. Heather Black. Oh, okay. Let's go to South Australia. Millicent in South Australia. There is a camellia tree, I'm sure, that is overgrown. Can we cut it back to make it more compact? A neighbour has told us it's very old and has been neglected. I'm not sure whether it's flowered yet. Heather, that's probably the question I would ask you. If it is flowered, then you can definitely prune it back. And you can prune quite hard with camellias. You don't want to just prune all the foliage off, but you can definitely bring them back and certainly get into it, remove old branches out, any dead wood, get rid of that, any wood that's overlapping, that's crossing over. I'm doing a story in one of the coming episodes of the Garden Gurus, and there's this amazing new tool from Still. It's a little handheld tool, and HSA 60, I think they call it. I could be right. They've got all these numbers. They make my life really difficult to try and remember the actual product code, but it's a little handheld saw, and it's so easy to use. It's lightweight, it's battery operated, and it's perfect for when you get into that sort of thicker wood. One thing about camellia wood is it can be quite hard, so this is ideal, this little saw. So keep your eye out for that. It's a handy thing. I do love this program in that we get lots and lots of really interesting new ideas, new types of fertilizer. I had somebody send me a new fertilizer made from mealworms. So I'm doing trials at the moment. It's really quite interesting, and it's really quite a good thing, I suppose, is that we get to see what works and what doesn't work, and maybe what works in certain conditions may not work in other conditions. So we can trial, and certainly when it comes to tools, when we see the innovation going in that space, to be able to share that with you via the show. I know every once in a while I'll get some angry person will send us a note to say, oh, it's a big advert, but it's not an advert. We are road testing. We're showing these things that make gardening easy. And that's a really important thing. You see, gardening shouldn't be hard. It's not a hard thing. It is an instinctual thing. But the hard thing is, as we get older, sometimes the actual, the work can be quite intensive on our bodies. And it's good for us to be out and physical and active, but not to the point where you're straining yourself. And that's where innovation comes in with these new ideas on tools and watering systems and all sorts of things that are better for the environment, better for the garden, and most importantly, make gardening easy and so much more fun. The gardener here, she's working so hard. She's going around watering all the plants with a watering can by hand. How good's that? That's fantastic. Okay. Let's keep rolling along. We're going to come all the way back to WA, which seems like quite a strange thing to say when you consider I'm here in Portugal. Lynn is in Les Murdy. My AOK plum is flowering its head off now, but the pollinating partners are nowhere near bud burst. Will I get any fruit? It's a really good question, actually, Lynn. You definitely need to have the cross-pollinators. The great thing, however, is that there are a number of universal pollinators that are in flower at the moment in the Perth Hills. So the one that's probably one of the better ones is the cherry plum, and that is pretty much the first. Almonds and plums are typically the very first of the flowers, and for yours to be at the moment in flower, as long as there's bee activity, and there will be, they'll move between the cherry plums through across to your AOK plum. I'm not sure. I've got to think about that, because I'm sure that'll make more sense to me when I realise what it is that you're trying to say. I want to say a big hello to Chantel. You'll see a new face on the Garden Gurus coming this series. But this lovely young lady who has just got such passion for gardening. And she's a gardener. She's not just that. She's got, I think it's 3 properties that she looks after in where she lives, and she is so passionate, and it was such a great. She's gentle and very sweet, but incredibly passionate, and I thought it would be great to bring that passion to the show. So you'll see there'll be 2 or 3 new faces pop up in the series. Of course, Nige and Bonnie will be back. They've been busy filming. Nige, in the very first episode, does what Nige does best, and he gives me a hard time. He came across and spent a bit of time with us and in my garden, and then took claim to pretty much building the whole garden. So somebody did say to me, it's a good way to go. And I said, you don't know what Nige does when he comes over. My wine fridge is completely gone every single time. So it cost me a fortune. Cost me a fortune in wine. No, I'm only joking. Nige is great. And so is young Bon, who's just come back from Europe with some incredible new plants. In fact, I think the team are in Melbourne at the moment, or about to go and film both with Bonnie, and then up into Sydney with Nigel. And later in the series, you'll meet Simon Holloway as well, who's another new face. So anyway, good afternoon, I should say, to you, Chantel. Thanks for joining us. Okay, let me keep moving along. Vinette Ainsberg, now you always give us some great contributions. Thanks for joining us again today at this different time for the broadcast. My orange fruit was a little tart. Is there something I could do to improve the sweetness for next time? Do you know what? There is, Vinette. And I actually had this problem myself several years ago. And it was with a blood orange, believe it or not. And I would have thought they would have remained pretty much true to form and not changed too much. But if you are in a situation where you get dramatic variance, and particularly in soils becoming quite acidic, and funny enough, Belladura can be like that, you end up in a situation where the soil can actually affect the taste, I suppose, of the fruit. And there is a bit of a trick, and that is adding sulfate of potash to the soil. So the potash sweetens the fruit. And the best time to do it is actually after you've harvested this crop. You're not going to change this crop. It is how it is. However, give it a good dose as soon as the crop's been picked, and probably do it again just as you start to see flowering, which won't be too far away, and that will have a significant impact on the flavour of the citrus themselves. So hopefully that helps. Let's have a look here. Shaylee she has given me a very long question. This came from Sharon Jacobson. Hello, Sharon. In Canowindra in New South Wales. I'm not sure where Canowindra is. Can you please tell me what's wrong with my Eureka lemon tree? This tree is now 2 to 2.5 years old. Bought it from Bunnings, planted in full sun. She's provided some pictures. Have a look. That's definitely not a lemon tree. So that can't be the right picture. Bought from Bunnings, planted full sun, went yellow like this. I've fed it with citrus fertilizer several times. That can't be. That can't be, but it is. See how yellow that is? That is a massive, massive pH problem. That is incredible. And it's very, very rare to see something go that yellow. There is no green in that at all, which indicates that the soil is probably quite alkaline. And I don't know Canowindra where it is, but you do need to do a soil pH test. Absolutely. That is quite remarkable as to how yellow that's gone. When you've got your pH test done, I would be suggesting that you look at putting a lot of organics into that soil. I'm trying to look at what that soil looks like. I can't really tell from here, but I would suggest to you that that's a really significant pH problem. You get the soil right. In fact, do you know what I would probably do? I'd dig this tree out, I think. I'd just take it out of the ground. I don't think it's going to recover if you don't. And I'd put it into a pot with really good quality potting mix, that blue bag of Osmocote potting mix, into a tub and let it recover. And then it will turn green in that environment and will start to recover. And then in the meantime, I would be working on getting that soil changed dramatically. And that's adding lots and lots and lots of different things. So into the soil, organics mainly. Yeah, what a story. What a dramatic variance that one is. That's quite remarkable. And you've tried all the right things. You've been adding you've put some beneficial bacteria in, you've put some sea salt in, and it's obviously just going completely yellow. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. I don't think I've seen so dramatic as that in a long time. Okay, let's have a look at next question. John O. Magurian, I hope I got that right. John O. You sent us some photos too. Thank you. This is another lemon tree. Now, this one's definitely just a classic case of an unhappy tree that's dropped most of its foliage by the looks. Yeah, and look, this really gets down to nutrition. I do a story. I actually did it at my place last week, and it'll pop up later in this series. And you'll have a look and you'll see what happens, how much energy is expended in producing all this fruit. And I tried to give an example of what happens if you don't replace it. And what I mean by that is that I have this small 2 meter, lots of lemons that has produced the most incredible crop. And there's probably, I think we worked it out, we actually went and weighed it, and we worked out there's around about 40 kilos of fruit on this small tree that's probably 1.5 meters tall by 2 meters wide, maybe not even that. And it's in a contained soil environment. And even though you look at the lemons, right, and you think, okay, well, a lemon is probably 80% moisture when you think about it, and 20% organics. All of those organics came out of that soil. 40 kilos of organics, minerals, came out of the soil to form that fruit. And that's the incredible productivity of the tree. The only thing is that if you don't replace that in the soil, the next time the tree goes to produce fruit, the fruit's all smaller. And then the next time it might start dropping leaves. And this is where I'm going with the photos you've sent us. It is a classic example of needing really good nutrition. So I would get around the base of the tree. I would prune out any dead wood. I would give it the feed of a lifetime, and whatever the recommended rates are, and I think it's about 50 grams per square meter of something like Osmocote or Treforte, I would be giving it 100 grams per square meter, and I would probably boost it with some dynamic lifter as well. So you're really looking to give this tree a big boost in its nutrition, because that soil is completely bereft of it. So you need to do that. You need to, when you put these guys down, all of these fertilizers, to be quite honest, you should always water them in thoroughly after you've done it. And I don't often recommend that you would ever double an application rate, but in case of that particular photo and the one that was prior, they're just desperately hungry. They're just so hungry. So hopefully that advice helps you anyway. Okay. Okay. My fee. I hope I got it right. My fee. In Sydney. Hello. My lemons. Oh, we're really on lemons today, aren't we? Which is in a pot this year. Are thick-skinned. Furry to feel and have an unusual texture and rusty look. Okay, now the rusty look is probably citrus scale, because that's what happens. They taste the same and they're juicy. The tree's healthy and normally the fruit is yellow and large, but the skin's getting quite thick. And what I would suggest to you is that you are basically in a situation where you need to be increasing the nutrition to this plant. Again, it's a very common thing with these highly productive plants, but often with thick rind, that can also be a combination of stresses as well. So, and generally dry stress, which could occur if it's in a pot and the root system is very, very full. So it only needs a bit of a shock when the fruit is setting, when the fruit's just forming, and that can lead to a very thick rind around the outside. There's a few different reasons why citrus get thick rinds, but that is probably the most common one. So it might be time for a repot, and springtime is the perfect time to do it. So yeah, let's get that into a new pot. Maybe some nice fresh potting mix. You'll see a common theme. Okay. Now, remember, tell me where you're from. Really important. Karina Bourne, how can I keep my snapdragons looking gorgeous? All right, the little trick with snapdragons, and it depends on what varieties you have. You have, obviously, snapdragons that are dwarf, and you have some of the big, tall, longer ones, which make great cut flowers. In both instances, they will benefit enormously from a weekly liquid feed. And that's just literally mixing your liquid fertilizer into a watering can. Now, normally I would tell you that something, I don't know, I would suggest to you that normally something like the organics, fish emulsion, seaweed, power feed, that they're going to do the job all on their own. But if you really want to get some really amazing results, then probably look for something like Thrive. And there's one that's Thrive for fruit and flowers. So it's got a higher K. That one is one that I would definitely be using. Used to use, and I don't know, maybe you guys can answer this because I haven't seen it around for a long period of time. I used to use one called Fostrogen. Fostrogen was amazing for promoting fruit and flower. But the great thing about both of those particular types is that when you mix them into the watering can thoroughly, they're absorbed through the foliage. And that makes such a big difference to the results. And so if you do that weekly with Snapdragons, you will get the most incredible results. I can see there's a few people. We started something with lemon trees. We've really got it. There's a lot of lemon trees questions coming through. There's a few people saying, John Stressos, I've got the same question. His lemon tree is also pimply and large. And now pimply could be caused by some other things as the fruit's forming, but large, thick-skinned, that's a different problem altogether. So yeah, that's nutritional. Pimply tends to be insect related and can be thrips and sometimes mites. Red spider mite can be pretty bad on lemons as well. So hopefully that helps. Christine Rankin says to say hello, which is lovely. Thank you, Christine. It's nice to have you back. Catalina Villar. Okay, I hope I got that right. Can I transplant a struggling pomegranate, but it's old? And I'm in the Lakes Entrance area of Victoria. Actually, Catalina, you can. And now, right about now, when it's completely dormant, is the best time to do it. And they do transplant as old trees. And I've seen them go from old trees in the ground where they had their whole life growing in the ground to being put into large pots and performing beautifully in that new environment. So that's good. Yep, Robin Shaw's given me some feedback. I think Fostrogen's gone the way of the dinosaurs. It was great, but now I tend to use a tomato food. Okay, well, there you go. Well, tomato food's definitely going to trigger that sort of growth. And we are rolling right through. Noella Hexel. Hello, Noella. Noella's from my part of the world. What vegetable should I be planting this weekend in Perth? All right, pretty much all the leafy ones, Noella. So either the salad plants, so any of those, or any of the brassicas. So, carrots. Carrots. What am I thinking? Cauliflower, cabbage, and of course, all of those things like kale, etc. from that family. The Chinese cabbages as well. They're all really the sort of plants that I would be putting in. Do not go to tomatoes just as yet. Don't go to any of those sorts of warmer season capsicums, any of those. Definitely not yet. Wait until it's warm, and probably in the area where we are, I wouldn't do that until the end of October, when I know I'm going to have a lot of hot days and the soil's going to be nice and warm. Hopefully that helps, Noella. Thanks for joining us too. Okay, we have a lot of questions. I think we're going to run over time. I think, how about we give it another 10 minutes? I know I'm not meant to do that, but let's do it because it's been a long time since we all caught up. You've all got a lot of questions to ask. I'm just looking through. Just remember, we're doing this. It's quite a remarkable thing that we're achieving here. So doing this whilst I'm over here in Porto in Portugal, filming for the Explore series, and at the same time I'm able to assist you, so many of you in places, Western Australia and Queensland, Tasmania, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales. Everybody's writing in. They've all got questions, which is great. So let's give it another 10. Okay, Sharon Shelton, Bathurst, New South Wales. You sent us some photos too. Great sending photos, and thanks for telling us where you're from and that. That's really cool. Oh yeah, this is great. So have a look at those. Not that long ago, we support the Australian nursery and garden industry with their Australian what they call their plant trials, and it's all these new varieties of plants. Sharon's saying a few months ago I purchased a couple of hanging pots of petunias from Bathurst. They've flowered ever since, which is great because remember we're not really in that time of the year. The colours are really unusual. Is this a mutation, or have some chemicals been added? And it's a really good question, Sharon. This is a completely natural breeding process, which I think is fantastic. And it just happens to be a new trend. So what's going on here? If you take a look at those flowers, they are just stunning. But basically, they would have been a small little bit of dappling of white through some purples probably. And then they kept breeding and breeding and breeding the ones that had more, and ended up in a situation where this lady's taking photographs in the background too. It's pretty funny. Where we're in a situation where you end up with a more intense colour. So this is just magic of what nurserymen and plant breeders do. I'm always blown away with their patience, their insight, the way they see things is really progressive, forward thinking. They years and years ahead. And this is all just about natural breeding. So it's what we call selection, natural selection. So very, very cool. Let's keep rolling along. Amanda O'Hagan. Hello, Amanda. I want to plant a lemon tree in a big pot. What sort of pot should I be looking for? Doing a lot of stories about pots actually through this series. And it's something I haven't done for years. And I really, I wanted to tell you the story about all the different types of pots that you'll see and how technology is changing that space. So certainly large pots that are so there's a lot of fiber cement or fiberglass pots, and they're very lightweight, and now the finish on them is so good that you can't tell sometimes that they are actually I suppose manufactured like that. They look like they're traditional earthenware kind of pots, the stuff that we've always sort of seen. It was I suppose that opportunity to talk about what is the best pot for certain types of plants, and we do feature it through this series. I'm going to suggest to you that one thing you never do, you can get a pot that's rounded, but you don't want one that's rounded and then comes in like that at the top, because it's going to fill that root, and the only way you'll get that out once the tree's mature is to break the pot. You don't want to do that if you've got a lovely pot. As far as size goes, if you've got a dwarf tree, 500 mil or 600 mil wide by a depth of a similar sort of depth is the sort of thing you want. And if you're going to go for an earthenware pot, remembering that plants' roots grow sideways, they grow sideways till they hit the wall of the pot, then they grow down, which is why when you pull a plant out of a pot, you'll see this massive roots around the outside. And sometimes when you break it open, there's soil on the inside and not as many roots. And that's because of the way plants' roots grow down, contained. Hopefully that all makes sense. What you want then is, if you're going to get a really earthenware pot, so something like, say, terracotta that breathes, you've got to understand that those roots on the outside are going to be exposed to a lot more air. Certainly, if it's an organic material, it's going to get very, very hot. And sometimes that can be a little disruptive for the plant's health. So it causes shocking, and that can cause fruit to drop, for example, if you're doing it with a lemon tree. So if you're going to do that, what I would recommend you do is you seal the inside of the pot. And most of these pot companies sell sealants, and you just seal the inside. That stops the pot from breathing. It encourages the moisture to stay on the inside, and it can only then flow out the bottom. Whew, that was a big answer, wasn't it? That was a lot there. Okay, let's keep rolling through, because I think Shaylee's telling me I'm talking too much. Elizabeth Ann, Elizabeth Ann, I'm not sure where you're from. Hi, Trevor and team. Lovely to see you back. What would be a good summer flowering flower to plant under citrus? Do you know what? There's a lot that you could be planting under citrus. And I'm going to suggest a herb. I'm just going to put it out there. One of the things I love planting in that sort of position, because it's shaded, is something that's got a broader leaf. And borage is a wonderful herb, and it's got those blue flowers, and they are absolutely gorgeous and look fantastic thrown into dishes and meals and drinks. They look fantastic with cocktails. So I hope that's worked really well. let's keep rolling along. That's my suggestion for you anyway. But there's a lot of things. Herbs definitely do very well under citrus trees. Elizabeth Ann, hopefully that helped and gave you an idea. Borage. It's a really cool thing, and great pollinator for bees, by the way. That's the other reason that you should have it. How do you stop ants getting into pot plants? This came from Lynn Bowditch. I hope I got that right, Lynn. Apologies if I didn't. That's a really good question. And the reason that ants are getting into your pots is that there's dry patches. It's a dry environment for them. It means you're not watering enough. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you haven't been watering enough. It could mean that you're just getting hydrophobic pockets in the soil. And that happens with organic potting mixes. It's quite a common thing. And that's why we always suggest that as you go into spring, you get I always say anyway, I prefer to have liquid wetting agents. You get the liquid wetting agent, mix it up into the watering can, and you literally put, if it's a decent sized pot, put 9 litres of water in there. What it'll do is it goes through, it'll go into those dry pockets, and it'll soak them. And that environment is not conducive to ants making a nest inside your pot plants. That's what you've got to do once a year. Gets the ants out, they'll go and move somewhere else. Ants are not always bad. They can be a bad thing sometimes in that they farm scale and aphid and stuff like that. But they're also a predator, and they do eat a lot of bugs that we don't, or control a lot of bugs that we don't want in our garden as well. So you don't really want to get rid of ants. So hopefully that helps. Okay, I'm looking. The questions are coming in thick and fast. Jody Malone, what is better to put on the garden to retain water, river rocks or mulch? Oh, it's a good question, Jody. Probably one of the most controversial things that I've ever done was there was a chap who used to put out a lot of advice, and he was suggesting that stone was fantastic to use in the environment that I live in, which is, I'm not sure where you are actually, but if you were in Perth or Adelaide, stone as a surface mulch in a shaded area, absolutely fine, no problems at all. However, if it's in full sun, when you get into summertime, that stone gets heated up, and we know that stone holds the heat in and then slowly releases it if the conditions are, cooling down on the outside. And of course, that dries the soil out. It can be good if you're trying to keep the soil warm, and you can maintain moisture levels, but if you don't want to use a lot of water, then stone is not a good thing to use as a mulch in full sun in hot, dry conditions. Possibly be okay in some of the higher areas in New South Wales and Victoria, but yeah, I'm not super keen on recommending stone as a mulch unless it's in a shaded position where it looks fantastic. Okay, let's go to Brisbane. Lee Verrill. Let's have a look. What should I be doing now to keep my plants healthy? You know what? A good dose of sea salt right now is a really good idea. And every single one of the plants in my garden, and also the gardens that we look after, Garden Gurus is a landscape garden maintenance company. They're all getting fertilized right now. All of them. Without exception, even the deciduous ones, because we know that they're starting to come into a period of time where they're going to go through growth. If we apply fertilizer now, it'll sink down in amongst those feeder roots. As the soil warms, they start sucking that nutrient up because it's available, and the plant gets the best possible start. So that's one of the things you could do. The reason I say sea salt is so good at activating all those beneficial plant hormones and chemicals in the soil around the roots, so they make the roots nice and healthy. Hopefully that helps. Okay, let's keep rolling on. Catalina Villa, hello, I'm in Victoria. My plum tree is not doing much. Don't worry, Catalina. It should be dormant at the moment. It should be pretty much in Victoria, totally dormant. It won't be too far away and it'll start growing. So don't go worrying too much about that. Marcia Blake, I'm not sure where you are. I'd love it if you could go through some plants that grow great in Australia that are better pollinated by ants rather than bees or hoverflies, please. And that's an interesting one, because ants and bees and hoverflies, they all do the same thing. It's not an unusual thing to see an ant foraging around inside a flower, for example, at the same time as bees are in there getting stuff out as well. So they do work in conjunction with each other, and they all end up being pollinators. However, there are some plants that are definitely A really good example of that would be custard apples. If you know custard apples or Rolinias or soursop, depending on where you are in Australia, we can grow all of those in different parts. They are pollinated really by ants, by ant activity, and that's the ants moving slowly across the tree, taking flowers that open in the morning, taking the pollen from those, and reaching the flowers that open in the evening or the afternoon, and moving it up to there. The other one that's a good example of that is, and at the moment we've just harvested ours, but a really good example of that is the cactus. So a whole bunch of different cactus are better fertilized by ants. And especially the dragon fruit. So as far as fruit goes, that's a good example there as well. Okay, I think I've got another big long question. So this one is from Imre Koltzi. Hopefully I got that right, Imre. Apologies if I didn't, but you're in Springfield in Queensland. You've sent us some photographs, so let's have a look. Can you help? I have tuft lawn laid at the start of the year. Landscaper said this was the best grass to lay as this area only receives a total of 3.5 hours of direct sunlight per day. Now in just months, it's rotting. Look, you know what? I would call this landscaper up and I would ask the landscaper to come back. That shouldn't happen. And 3.5 hours isn't enough for any grass variety, any proper lawn variety to grow properly. More likely in that environment, I would be suggesting that the turf comes out because it's not going to get any better. That is struggling with light, and it's also struggling, I think, with water. And I would be looking at putting dichondra in there. Dichondra would be fantastic. It loves those conditions. In fact, you may even be able to oversow it and have the combination of the two. The other one that I've got in shady spots, which is really, really good, is there's a low-growing, what we call lawn alternative form of peppermint. And it's a mint. It grows flat across the ground. You run the lawnmower over it if it gets a little bit rough. It's a dark green foliage. But the most important thing is when you walk across it, you have this wonderful, fresh, minty smell coming in. And it grows incredibly well in shaded positions. And once it reaches it too sunny, it stops and the grass continues on. So that's a bit of an alternative anyway. There's a few ideas there. So we are 10 minutes past the hour. Shaylee's telling me we need to wrap, which I think we do need to wrap, which is a bit of a shame. But there are so many questions that have come through. Maybe could I ask you, if you could be patient, we'll be back next week. I think I'll be sailing on the Douro River here in Portugal. So I will make sure I'm here to answer your questions. Let's have a bit of a think about what it is that you want to do. I'm just looking, there's so many questions, so many positive bits of feedback you've given us, and I really do want to be able to answer them. So don't worry, we'll keep those. Shaylee will take these questions. We'll pop them. They'll be the beginning of next week's show, so make sure you join us. It's going to be an afternoon show again. And I do want to say to you that please, if you think that this is the best time, let us know. Maybe this is the best time for the majority of our friends and those people who can't join us at this time. Maybe they will be able to just to catch up when they can have a stream of the feed later on at a time that suits them. But you have been so kind and generous with your comments today. I'm so appreciative. And I'm so glad that we're back and we were able to do this. We do have to choose our winner, by the way, of our question of the day. And there's some really good ones. I couldn't help but smile with Nick with his Lego plants question. Not so silly. We might run that through our, back past our friends at Channel 9 and see whether they've got some ideas there. Vinette Eisenberg, I thought the orange story question was a really good question. And it's something that, adding sulfate of potash sweetens fruit. And I've seen it happen with things like mangoes and definitely citrus. Big way to sweeten the fruit in citrus is to add that. And now's the time to do it. So great question. I think we're going to go with you, Vinette Einsberg in Balladura. Thanks so much, because you're a big supporter of ours. And for all those people who are back joining us again, thank you. For those who couldn't make it, hopefully you enjoy the stream later on and you can make the most of it, some of the advice that we've shared. Shaylee has noted all these questions out. She sent me a note. Remember, we are back with the Garden Gurus this weekend, this Saturday at 4:30 on Channel 9. And I would love to be able to get some feedback from you on the stories. And of course, we've got some some wonderful new presenters going to start to join us through the series. And I think you'll enjoy their views on things. It's great to see gardening through other people's eyes. And I'll try and share a little bit of some of the things that I see as I'm travelling through beautiful Portugal and a bit later on in this month into Spain. So there's a lot going on. So yeah, I think that's about it. We've picked our winner. We've told you about the weekend. Big thank you to our friends at Garden Express who have supported this and given us the ability to bring it to you. I'm always forever grateful, and don't forget about that offer. That offer with those beautiful kangaroo paws, magnificent, and now's the time to plant them. One little tip, get some of those tree planting tablets, those Treforte planting tablets that they've got. You'll see actually this weekend on the show, one of the gardens that I built for the Water Corporation going back in November last year, and have a look at the plants and the results that we got with grevilleas and kangaroo paws and so many other wonderful Australian native plants as a consequence of putting them in as tiny little tubes, the size that you'll see. In fact, they were smaller than the stuff that Garden Express are putting out, and just how magnificent they are in such a short period of time. Thanks for all your good wishes with travel. We'll have a lot of fun. We always do. We've got a full film crew over here. Going to have a lot of fun. Now, I think Shaylee says, I think we're starting at 3:15 p.m. Perth time next week. That is 5:15 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And if you're in between, you'll need to juggle it and double check because I'm not 100% sure at the moment. We will be back, obviously, with live next week. Thanks so much. And congratulations, Vinette. Well done. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Have a great time. That's all we've got for you today for the Garden Gurus Live. I'm Trevor Cochrane. We'll see you again real soon.